Okay, guys, let's check and see how you did on this Unit 5 test review. I would say a word of caution. If you are just watching this video to get the answers, that is not going to be very beneficial to you in the directions I told you to watch the videos once you have tried to complete the test review. So I would prefer that you try to do these problems on your own before you watch this video. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to do problems 1 through 5. So if we're looking, it says simplify each and state the excluded values. So we're going to simplify this one. So we look at the top. This is a binomial. So we look and see if there's anything that we can take out. Is there anything that they have in common? Well, they do. That's a 5k. So we're going to take out a 5k, which would leave us with 5k plus 9. And we do the same thing in the bottom. We look and see if there's anything they have in common that we can take out. And there is. That would be a 35k. Which would leave us with k plus 1. Now, we see if we can cancel out anything. Our k's will cancel. And then 5 and 35, 5 will become 1, and 35 will become 7. So that is all the simplifying we can do because these two parentheses are not the same. So this is going to be equal to 5k plus 9 over k plus 1. Our restrictions are what make our denominator equal to 0. So 35k, what could we put in? 35 times what would be 0? That would be 0. And then for here, what would make this equal to 0 would be if k is negative 1, because negative 1 plus 1 is 0. So k can't be negative 1. So if we look down here, we're looking for this answer, and you can see that that is answer choice C. So you should have gotten C for that one. Okay, for number 2, if we simplify, if we look at the top, again, they have a 35 in common, which would leave us with v minus 1 over. These two would have a 7 in common, which would leave us with 2v plus 5. Okay, we can't cancel the parentheses, but we can cancel. The 7 would become a 1, and it would go into the 35 5 times. So we can do that. All right, so that's going to equal 5 times v minus 1 over 2v plus 5. Okay, what can v not be equal to? Remember, that is setting this equal to 0. So if you can't easily see that, come up to the side and say, okay, what makes 2v plus 5 equal to 0? Subtract your 5 and then divide by your 2. And that would give you v equals negative 5 halves. So we would say that v cannot equal negative 5 halves here. Okay, so we look for this answer. 5 times v minus 1 over 2v plus 5, and then x can't be negative 5 halves. So our answer is choice A. Okay. If we look at number 3, okay, for these we're going to have to factor them. Now, if we look real closely at this, notice something. X squared plus 4x minus 3. So let's see what we can do here. What if I took a negative out up here? Just a negative. Let's see what happens. That makes that positive. It makes the 4x negative, and it makes that one positive. Now I want you to notice something. The bottom is x squared minus 4x plus 3. So these two things are the same, which means we can cross them out. And we didn't even have to factor. I originally thought we were going to have to factor, but we didn't. So we're just left with a negative out here, which means anything over itself is equal to 1. So our answer here is negative 1. Now, in order to come up with our restrictions, we do need to factor the denominator. So we need to know where we can get a plus 3 and a minus 4. Well, that's going to be a negative 3 and a negative 1. So this is x minus 3 times x minus 1. So now we can get our restrictions. X cannot equal 3 or 1. Okay, so we come over here, and you can see that answer choice A is the one that matches what we came up with. Okay, for number 4, if we look at the top, it's a binomial, so we can take out a 50. Actually, a 50n. Let me put that in there. We can take out a 50n because there's an n in both places, which will leave us with n plus 1. And in the denominator, again, we have a binomial, but we could take out a 10n this time, which would leave us with 2n plus 9. Okay, our n's here, this n and this n will cancel. And then 10 goes into 50 5 times. That becomes a 1 down here. So we're left with 5 times n plus 1 over 2n plus 9. Okay, now for our restrictions, again, it's where this here would be equal to 0. So if you don't know how to get that, just write off, set 2n plus 9 equal to 0. Subtract 9, and then divide by 2, and we get that n equals negative 9 halves. So that's what n cannot be. N cannot be negative 9 halves. Okay, that's that part. And then over here, if we look back, 10 times n, because we have to go back to the original denominator. 10 times n, what would make that? That would be if n is 0. So n can also not be 0. All right, so if we look, our choice D is the answer. Okay, for number 5, we're going to have to factor both of these. So for the top, I need to get a plus 5 and a minus 6. All right, that's going to be a negative 5 and a minus 1. So this is going to be x minus 5 times x minus 1. And then here, we need to get a positive 45 and a negative 14. So two things to give us positive 45 and negative 14. That's going to be a negative 9 and a negative 5. So x minus 9, x minus 5. Okay, we can cancel out the x minus 5s. That leaves us with x minus 1 over x minus 9. Now we list our restrictions. X cannot equal 9 or 5. Okay, so when we look over here, you can see that answer choice A is the one that matches. All right, if you have any questions, let me know.